Imagine stepping into a tomb untouched for 4,000 years. Your flashlight dances across gold-plated treasures and rests on a death mask. Glistening, serene, hiding horrors its creators could never have imagined. As you move closer, your fingers brush the ancient wrappings of a teenage pharaoh, and suddenly, it hits you. He didn't die from war, illness, or accident. He died because his parents were siblings, his grandparents too, and their parents before them. Each breath he ever took was a silent battle against the genetic poison pulsing through his blood. Picture it, growing up hailed as a god, yet your own body feels like a curse. Your spine twists, your jaw never quite fits right. By 16, you walk with a cane. Servants whisper of a curse, while you limp through marble corridors, suffocating in golden robes. You don't know what genetics are. No one does. Not yet. But you know something is wrong, deeply wrong, with your family. Still, your parents call it divine. They see your pain and tell you it's holy. They watch their children die in infancy and praise the gods' mysterious wisdom. They've built a kingdom on broken bodies and called it paradise. What if I told you this wasn't a story? That for 3,000 years, the pharaohs of Egypt, the most powerful people on earth, were slowly destroying themselves in the name of purity. Obsessed with preserving divine blood, they turned their royal lines into genetic prisons. Before we descend into those golden tombs, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop it in the comments. It's amazing to think that people from all over the globe can witness the unraveling of such an ancient, tragic truth. Because what we're about to explore isn't just history. It's a 3,000-year experiment in self-destruction. The origins of divine purity. To understand how Egypt's rulers became victims of their own ambition, we need to travel back, way back, to the very start of Egyptian civilization. The early pharaohs didn't set out to destroy their bloodline. They thought they were preserving something sacred. They believed their blood was divine, literally a gift from the gods. To mix it with commoners would be to dilute that sacred essence. So one day, a pharaoh looks around and decides, only his sister is worthy to be his queen, not for love, not for desire, but because no one else is holy enough. His priests agree, his advisors do the math, the people cheer. No one thinks about what this means for the children. To them, it makes perfect sense. A pharaoh isn't just a king. He's Horus on earth, descended from Ra himself. A living god can't marry a mortal. So he marries his sister, and soon his children do the same. What started as religious doctrine becomes cultural dogma. Royal children are raised believing that marrying their siblings is not just normal, it's necessary. Diluting divine blood could anger the gods, they're told. It could doom the entire kingdom. Generation after generation, this belief is passed down like a sacred torch, and every time it's passed, it burns a little brighter, a little more dangerous. Signs of the curse. At first, the signs are small: a crooked jaw, unusual eyes. Priests call them gifts from the gods, proof of divine favor. But over time, the damage builds up, layer upon invisible layer, like silt gathering in the Nile. A prince is born with a clubfoot, a holy mark. A princess dies in childbirth. Called home by the gods, a queen bears only stillborns, blessed with spiritual destiny. No one sees the real pattern. These aren't miracles, they're warning signs, and it gets worse. What started as divine preservation becomes systematic destruction. But it moves so slowly, so silently, that even Egypt's brilliant minds don't catch it. The civilization that built the pyramids and mapped the stars couldn't see what was happening in its own palaces. Royal doctors wrote down everything: unusual bones, illnesses, short lives. But they never connected the dots. Their beliefs made them blind. Every palace nursery was a ticking time bomb. Every marriage between siblings was another spark. And the idea of purity they clung to like scripture. It was the very thing destroying them. The heretic king, a glimpse of truth. Fast forward to the scorching sands of the 14th century BCE. A dynasty rises that pushes inbreeding to its extreme and documents every tragic moment. In 1353 BCE, a child is born along the Nile who will one day defy Egypt's gods. But before Akhenaten becomes the infamous heretic king, he's just a boy trapped in a body that defies belief. His skull is stretched unnaturally long, his hips are wide, his chest has feminine curves. No robe can hide the fact that the god king doesn't look like a god at all. Palace servants glance away. Courtiers speak in soft, rehearsed phrases. Everyone sees the deformities, but no one speaks. Mirrors lie. Portraits flatter. But the truth stares back in every polished bronze plate. Akhenaten doesn't look like the gods on temple walls, and he knows it. His parents, themselves the product of sibling marriage, convince themselves that his appearance is divine. They whisper the gods work in mysterious ways. They whisper. But when Akhenaten becomes pharaoh, he makes a stunning move. He commands artists to paint what they see. No more lies. No more stylized perfection. He wants the truth. For the first time in Egyptian art, royal portraits show reality. Elongated heads, sagging bellies, strange limbs. Art historians call it a revolution. But it wasn't artistic expression. It was surrender. This king was tired of pretending. The tragic family portrait. The paintings from Akhenaten's reign are haunting. The royal family doesn't look human. They look alien. But they're not. They're the physical result of generations of genetic collapse. Akhenaten marries Nefertiti, and they have 6 daughters. Some records hint at infant sons who never survived. The daughters who lived carried the same twisted features, the same genetic legacy. Artists still paint them as divine, but behind palace doors, servants whisper. The princesses hide from the sun. They struggle with simple tasks. They are raised to rule, but their own bodies defy them. Akhenaten's radical religious shift, the creation of a new god, Aten, may have been born not out of spiritual revelation, but desperation. Maybe he thought if he abandoned the old gods who cursed his family, a new one might offer mercy. He builds a new capital, Amarna, a city in the desert, far from traditional Egypt. The royal family lives in isolation, believing this will protect them. But even divine walls can't keep out the truth. Art from this period shows everything: the deformities, the struggles, the pain, but it tries to spin it as beauty, as divine, as perfection. Akhenaten dies young. So do his brothers. His revolution dies with him. His city crumbles. His name is erased from monuments. But the damage doesn't die. It passes on. Enter the boy king. In 1341 BCE, a boy is born already carrying the weight of his father's mistakes. You know his name, Tutankhamun. He is the most famous pharaoh in history and the most tragic. Tutankhamun, the divine cripple. Now picture this: a boy no older than 9, wrapped in gold and power, hobbling through a palace while everyone around him pretends not to see him stumble. That's Tutankhamun, Egypt's most iconic pharaoh. But behind the gold mask lies a body crippled by centuries of inbreeding. His left foot curves inward, a condition we now call clubfoot. Every step is painful. His spine arches abnormally. His chest is sunken and malformed, making it hard to breathe. In the burning Egyptian heat, even standing upright is a struggle. Palace doctors hover around him constantly, offering potions and prayers. But there's no cure for what he carries in his DNA. The damage is baked into his bones. He is, by every public measure, a god. Yet his body is a battleground of broken parts. Imagine being worshipped by a nation while needing walking sticks just to move from room to room. Court rituals become exercises in illusion. Priests chant of his strength, while servants quietly position supports to keep him from collapsing. Over 130 walking sticks are found buried in his tomb. Not symbols of wisdom or authority, just tools. Tools to keep a broken boy standing long enough to be seen. Some are plain wood, others are carved and gilded with gold, but all tell the same story. Tutankhamun's body was failing him every single day. A golden cage, Tutankhamun grew up surrounded by unimaginable luxury. Gold, servants, jewels, palaces. But he was also surrounded by silence. No real friends, no real freedom. Other children were kept away, for his safety, yes, but also to hide the truth. His wife, Ankhesenamun, was also his half-sister. She carried the same genetic curse. Their marriage wasn't just taboo, it was dangerous. They tried to have children, but those pregnancies ended in silence. Miscarriages, stillbirths, tiny mummified corpses found in his tomb. Mute testimony to what happens when broken genes meet in another generation. Tutankhamun's world was a palace of illusion. Walls decorated with images of muscular, perfect pharaohs. His ancestors, supposedly. But he didn't look like them. And he knew it. Artists were given an impossible task. Make this frail, twisted boy look divine. The solution? Stop trying to make him look real. His portraits became stylized, exaggerated, symbolic, anything but accurate. Behind closed doors, royal physicians documented everything. His bone deformities, his weak immune system, his struggle to gain weight, his fragile skin, his difficulty healing. What modern scientists recognize as a textbook case of inbreeding was recorded in painful detail by ancient hands. The final blow. At just 19 years old, the boy king's body finally gave out. A simple case of malaria, something most healthy people survive, became a death sentence. His immune system, battered and broken from generations of incest, couldn't fight it off. Lying in his golden bed, sweating from fever, struggling to breathe, perhaps he understood what his ancestors could not. That this wasn't divine punishment or mystical fate. It was the result of centuries of choices made in the name of purity. Tutankhamun died young and was buried quickly. The world forgot him until 1922, when Howard Carter uncovered his tomb, nearly untouched. The tragedy that had cursed him in life preserved him in death. In 2010, DNA testing confirmed what history had whispered for centuries. Tutankhamun was the product of brother-sister incest, a genetic victim of royal ideology. His tomb became famous not for treasures alone, but for what his body told us. His suffering was real, and it was preventable. Repeating the mistake. You'd think that Tutankhamun's death would have been a wake-up call, that Egypt's rulers would have realized the dangers of inbreeding. But history has a way of repeating itself, especially when power is involved. Fast forward 1,200 years. Egypt is no longer ruled by native pharaohs. It's been conquered by Alexander the Great. When he dies, one of his generals, Ptolemy, takes Egypt for himself. He walks among the temples. He sees the paintings, the statues, the sacred texts, and he makes a fatal decision. He decides to become pharaoh, but not just any ruler, an authentic Egyptian god-king, which means marrying like one too. He begins a new dynasty, a foreign bloodline that adopts Egypt's most dangerous tradition, sibling marriage. The Macedonian Greeks who ruled Egypt didn't start out Egyptian, but they knew how to play the part. To maintain their power, they imitated the ancient customs, even the destructive ones. For 300 years, they perfected the art of royal inbreeding. Brothers and sisters were raised together, then forced to marry each other. This wasn't about love. It was about legacy, politics, control. A family tree twisted beyond recognition. Picture the palace discussions, children playing in the courtyard, a brother and sister who, in a few years, would be married, not to strangers, but to each other. Their fates sealed before they understood what fate even meant. This wasn't some distant, arranged political marriage. This was family twisted into obligation. Generation after generation, the same names repeat. The same faces appear on coins and temple walls. The family tree becomes a genetic circle, tighter and tighter, until it can barely sustain life. By the time Cleopatra is born in 69 BCE, the cycle has run nearly 250 years. She is the final result of an experiment that started with divine ambition and ended in genetic collapse. The myth of beauty. We've all heard the stories. Cleopatra, the seductive queen, the irresistible beauty. But the truth may be far more tragic. After 250 years of sibling marriage, she likely carried the same genetic baggage as her ancestors. Historians suspect jaw deformities, exaggerated facial features, possible learning challenges, traits the royal court worked overtime to hide. Her real beauty was her mind. She spoke 9 languages. She studied philosophy. She played Roman politicians like a master chess player. Her relationships with Julius Caesar and Mark Antony weren't just love stories. They were strategic. They were lifelines. She needed new blood, desperately. Her children with them were her hope, a chance to break the curse. But Rome had no interest in mercy. Octavian, the man who would become Augustus, saw Cleopatra's children as threats, powerful heirs, stronger heirs. He made sure they were erased. The healthiest royal babies born in centuries, murdered for politics. The final act. In 30 BCE, Cleopatra chose death over humiliation. According to legend, a venomous asp delivered her to the afterlife. But in a way, death by snakebite was a mercy. She died with her bloodline, the last of the Ptolemies, the final product of a centuries-long obsession with purity. The irony is crushing. The Macedonian conquerors who thought they had mastered Egypt were ultimately destroyed by Egypt's most dangerous legacy. They arrived as rulers. They left as genetic wreckage. A cycle of collapse. This pattern of destruction wasn't isolated. It didn't just happen once. Egypt's royal inbreeding wasn't a straight line. It was a vicious cycle. Periods of extreme genetic isolation were often followed by brief moments of recovery before the spiral began again. We can trace it across millennia. Even during the Pyramid Age, there are hints. Tomb inscriptions and royal lineage records pointing to occasional sibling marriages. But it wasn't yet the norm. Not yet a full-blown ideology. The damage was beginning, quietly, subtly, marriage by marriage, burial by burial. Then, after the Old Kingdom collapsed, The Middle Kingdom brought a breath of fresh air, literally. Pharaohs began marrying foreign princesses. Alliances were made. Bloodlines diversified. For a time, Egypt flourished, politically, genetically. Mummies from this era show longer lifespans, stronger bones, fewer deformities. For once, the children of pharaohs looked like the gods they were supposed to be. But power has a way of erasing memory. By the time the new kingdom arrives, the old arrogance returns. Pharaohs like Akhenaten bring sibling marriage back with a vengeance. The Amarna period becomes ground zero for genetic disaster. We see it not just in bones and bodies, but in art. Elongated skulls, feminized male torsos, fragile limbs, and they're not symbolic, they're real. A gallery of genetic collapse painted in real time. Hope and hubris. After Amarna falls, sanity returns, briefly. New dynasties turn outward again. Pharaohs marry Nubians, Libyans, Near Eastern royalty. Egypt becomes a melting pot. The genetic tide turns. Mummies from this time tell a different story. Stronger frames, clearer features, healthier lives. The kingdom stabilizes. For a moment, Egypt learns. For a moment. But then come the foreign conquerors. And with them, the final act of Egypt's genetic tragedy. The Macedonian Ptolemies arrive not just with swords, but with inherited arrogance. They look at temple walls and sacred scrolls and decide to repeat the very mistakes that doomed the dynasties before them. Only this time, they take it further than ever before. Their obsession with purity isn't just ritual, it becomes identity. For 300 years, they double down. Brothers marry sisters, again and again, until the family tree is a maze of incest. Until cousin becomes father and sibling becomes spouse, until the genes can bear no more. And yet, they think they're preserving strength. In reality, they're watching it rot from the inside out. A warning carved in stone. Each time this cycle repeats, it leaves a trail, visible, measurable, heart-wrenching. Mummy after mummy, tomb after tomb, each one whispering the same warning. Diversity is strength. Isolation is death. But the lesson was ignored. Repeatedly. Because in the minds of the powerful, bloodline is everything. Purity means control. And control, they believe, is worth any price, even if that price is paid by their own children. This wasn't just a political failure. It was a human catastrophe. Played out in cribs and sickbeds, nurseries and tombs, behind palace walls where golden ceilings masked unbearable suffering, inside the golden prison. To understand the full horror, you have to picture what life was really like for these royal children. They woke each day in marble chambers and golden beds. Servants greeted them as gods, but their bodies screamed before their feet even touched the floor. Their jaws throbbed with pain from malformed bones. Breathing was labored, their spines bent, limbs twisted, immune systems broken. And still, they were expected to be divine. They couldn't play with other children, couldn't form real friendships, couldn't run or laugh or learn freely. Their companions were cousins, who would become spouses, siblings, who bore the same deformities. Imagine growing up in a world where everyone around you looks wrong, and so do you. But no one can explain why. They lived in golden prisons, fed the finest foods they couldn't chew, given libraries they couldn't read, surrounded by scrolls praising their greatness, while their bodies betrayed them daily. And when they reached adulthood, if they survived that long, they were told to pass on the legacy, to create more children like themselves, to perpetuate the curse, mothers and misery. For royal women, the suffering was doubled. They weren't just victims, They were expected to become vessels, each pregnancy a gamble. Would the child be born alive? Would it survive the year? Would it be so deformed that even royal propaganda couldn't hide it? Some queens simply vanished from public life after too many losses. Others turned to wine, to opium, to numb the unbearable grief. They were praised as divine mothers, while burying child after child. Palace records hint at their heartbreak. The disappearances, the silences, the mummies of infants, carefully embalmed and hidden in secret tombs, testimonies to love and loss in the shadow of ideology. The biology behind the curse. Today, science tells us what ancient Egypt never could. When siblings have children, there's a 1 in 4 chance the child will inherit 2 copies of any harmful recessive gene. In a diverse population, these genes are rare and usually canceled out by healthy ones. But in a closed loop, where siblings marry for generation after generation, the damage compounds like a debt that never stops growing. At first, it's subtle, a crooked tooth, a soft bone. But over time, it becomes devastating. Jaws that can't chew, lungs that can't breathe, hearts that can't pump blood, brains that struggle to think or grow. It's all there, in the art, in the bones, in the DNA. Elongated skulls, bulging eyes, deformed jaws, fragile frames. Royal portraits didn't lie. They just didn't understand what they were showing. And the worst damage? You couldn't see it. It was inside. Immune systems so broken that a minor infection became fatal. Hormones so imbalanced that growth was stunted. Neurological issues that altered speech, behavior, emotion. Every generation made the next more vulnerable. And the pattern never stopped, because no one could see it, or they refused to. The longest genetic experiment. The pharaohs weren't just rulers. They became unwilling participants in the longest, most tragic genetic experiment in history. A 3,000-year study in human suffering. But unlike a lab, this experiment wasn't controlled. It was cultural. It was sacred. And it was enforced by politics, religion, and fear. Some periods brought recovery, brief, beautiful moments of diversity and strength, but arrogance always returned. And with it, the obsession with bloodline purity. Each new dynasty thought it was different, smarter, stronger, immune, and each fell the same way, not by war, not by famine, but by their own biology. The final echo. And now we return to where we began, back to that dark tomb, the air still, the gold mask gleaming. But now, you see it differently. This isn't just the face of a god, it's the face of a boy broken by choices made long before he was born, a boy whose every breath was a war against his own blood. If these ancient rulers could speak to us, what would they say? Maybe the heretic king would warn us about the dangers of blind faith. Maybe the boy Pharaoh would beg us to choose health over pride. Maybe the last queen would whisper, choose love, not lineage. They lived as gods, but died as the greatest cautionary tale in genetic history. Their mummies are now studied in labs, their DNA sequenced, their suffering translated into science, and their voices, long silenced, still echo through time with a message we must never forget. Purity is not power. Diversity is survival. Remember us, and never make our mistake again.